My topic for the conference is Nexus Marine Systems Role in the Unification of Amitav Ghosh's Extreme Demographic Divide. I'll be focusing on two of his works, the first being the first book from his Ibis trilogy, The Sea of Poppies, and the second being The Hungry Tide, which is a standalone book. It does not belong to the Sea of Poppies Ibis trilogy installment. So Amitav Ghosh's Sea of Poppies and The Hungry Tide bear the testimony to the dynamics of colonialism in pre and post-independent South Asia. The watery medium of the Indian Ocean and the marshy swamps of the Bay of Bengal personify and unite the grief, memory, and emotional connection that the indentured poor, the coolies, and fishing families have suffered for generations. Ghosh's novels offer a wide and vast panoptic spectrum into the lives of the passengers on board, where the pre-existing and ever-dominant caste and communal divide seem to dissolve under the saline waters of a shared past and future. This paper shall dissect Ghosh's marine-themed novels circumscribing and passing the Indian coastline, both in colonial India, that is, before India got its independence from British Raj before 1947, and a post-colonial one, um, um, that being the Hungry Tide, where linguistic inhibition, imposed identity crisis, and displacement play a fundamental role in shaping the identity, liminality, and dissolution of the people. Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak, in her criticism of culture and its disappearance amidst globalization, echoes how revival of our shared memories is elemental to the role of essential decolonization. Ghosh's The Ibis trilogy crafts the narrative of people from different castes across the Indian society, different religion, their background, creed, and ethnicity. Interestingly, on a land fence exists, but on sea, with its unpredictable nature, strangers by societal fractures and fissures unite together to brave the natural tumult. The marine polity and nature easily makes man resent emotions of enmity and apathy for one another. This paper's objective is to highlight on the role that the waters take in contracting the gap and corroding the scars of a colonial catastrophe. So the first book that I'm going to focus on is the Sea of Poppies. So before I jump into the narrative of the Sea of Poppies, I would like to quote a few lines from a poem by Brother Marvin that has been taken from his Jahaji Bhai poem. Jahaji Bhai translates to brothers on the ship or ship brothers. The indentured ship and the slavery bind together two races in unity. Acha dosti, good friendship. There was no more Mother Africa, no more Mother India, just Mother Trini, that is Trinidad. Janmabhoomi, my home. My bahut acha planted sugarcane down in the Karoni plain. So Ram Logan, Basdev, Prakash, and I, these are the names of the passengers, is Jahaji Bhai, Brotherhood of the Boat, Jahaji Bhai. The above lyrics belong to the Trinidadian Chutney Soca hit called Jahaji Bhai by Brother Marvin. Chutney Soca developed as a result of Indo-Trinidadian intervention into traditional soca or soul of calypso music and is characterized by elements like Hindi-English lyrics or Indian instruments like the dholak. In itself, the Chutney Soca is the embodiment of the kind of hybridity that characterizes diaspora studies, both in terms of its stylistic fusion and the mixed language of the lyrics themselves. The Sea of Poppies is the story of how indentured immigration created an Indian diaspora that spread all over the world, with the migrants connected by the invisible ties of a shared history of indentured servitude. Set in 1838, on the backdrop and the eve of the First Opium War, the novel focuses on two significant socio-historical enterprises of the 19th century, the trade of opium as a cash crop in the eastern part of India, that being Bengal, which is West Bengal in today's post-colonial India and post-independent India for the Chinese market and the transport of Indian indentured workers to British-owned sugarcane plantations in Mauritius, which is the actual destination of the ibis in this particular novel, uh, that being in the east coast of Africa, Fiji, and Trinidad. The former dictates the course of the novel's events on land, and the latter forms the crux of Ghosh's narrative as it revolves around the gathering of a motley crew of the empire's rejects and misfits who travel to Mauritius as indentured laborers. Ghosh renegotiates discourses of subalternity from the perspective of his indentured diaspora while negotiating his vessel through the Kalapani, the dark water of the Indian Ocean. The Kalapani is also another name for the cellular jail located in the southern part of the uh, of the Indian subcontinent, that being the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, where the political prisoners used to be housed. Ghosh brings to life the human element of the empire's economy in The Sea of Poppies, highlighting the condition of the human subjects who made up the British Raj in India. His novel is set in a time when the colony's main exports were drugs and thugs, opium and coolies or laborers. On a side note, I would also like to intervene with the fact that apart from opium, um, people from the state of West Bengal were also forced to cultivate dye, which was then transported to the factories in Victorian England, and it was then used to manufacture products, textile and fabrics, etc. So both these crops proved to be the plantation of these crops as well as their farming. It was detrimental to the farmers of India, of Bengal, because both these crops, they would not only render the land infertile, but infertile for future use, but it did not also provide them with any economic benefit because their rights to gain out of plantation, gain out of um, farming those lands had already been taken, just as the handicraft industry had been by the Britishers. With this, Ghosh combines one of his favorite metaphors, that of the journey or the voyage, which returns over and over in his novels. Ghosh has also used migration in his other novels as well, like The Glass Palace and The Hungry Tide. In the former, he rethought the history of Burma within the larger South Asian historical spectrum, and in the latter, he recast the role of the Sundarban archipelago within subcontinental narratives. So this has been taken from Amitav Ghosh's World Histories from Below by Atoinette Burton, History of the Present. Ghosh has always used migration as a trope in order to revisit existing colonial historical narratives from a hitherto unexplored perspective, what Atoinette Burton describes as history from below. It is a tendency which perhaps becomes more relevant and important in today's political context. As a shelter for those in destitution, the ibis is home to as colorful and disparate a group of people as the British Empire could have mustered, and an unlikely dynasty is born out of it, spanning continents, races, and generations. These characters are cut off from their roots and are looking forward to a fresh start, which is perhaps why they are prone to invent new names and histories for themselves. Ghosh's exploration of the contemporary social hierarchies shows the characters striking attempts to find a place for themselves to belong in a larger system, something that it did not have in their respective homes, because at home in Calcutta, where the journey begins in India, they were divided due to their differences and distinctively disparate uh, characters when it came disparate feature when it came to their class, caste, and background. The displacement the characters undergo triggered a new sense of belonging. The way to find this place of belonging is to transgress the accepted boundaries imposed upon them by race, gender, and caste that have victimized much of the crew of Ibis. Since these boundaries exist on land, it is only natural that the reshaping of their identities would occur on water where no lines can be drawn and rivers and oceans merge because our nature does not make any discrimination, which is policy that is adopted by human beings. But when these passengers are on the schooner Ibis, they don't have any differences other than being Jahaji Bhais on the same Jahaj that is Ibis. It is important to note that the kind of homesickness associated with the traditional notions of diaspora is missing in the case of Ibis's ship children because of their traumatic associations with their place of origin. In choosing new names for themselves, the shipmates rid themselves of the baggage that came with their caste, class, or racial identity. The waters of the Indian Ocean, called the dark waters in common parlance, in effect become an equalizer that fractures the traditional ways of defining one's identities, and the ship becomes an embodiment of the global cultural space. This group of people who would have perhaps never come across one another under regular circumstances on the empire's lands are brought together by the experience of displacement, and in the process of their intermingling, a new diaspora is formed. Their relationship is now that of Jahaji Nata, Nata being relationship of the ship, one forged by the experience of crossing turbulent seas together, while they are brought together by their respective sufferings. The physical move away from the sufferings that are brought together on land with its scope to create something anew on this on the water mass. And interestingly, the ibis also becomes a liminal space that serves as a microcosm of what would later function as a full-fledged social system in the land of Mauritius, containing within itself members from diverse castes, professions, regions, religions, and classes. It is a sort of Noah's Ark for the empire. The use of many languages on the vessel demonstrates how this space functioned. Languages spoken on the Ibis include many languages like Bhojpuri, Bengali, Lashkari, Hindustani, and English. They come together and intermingle much like the speakers do, becoming a fluid sea of languages. Like all other barriers within the Jahaji relatives, the linguistic barriers to dissolve as hybrid languages come up and identities are forged, and on they proceed towards their journey towards Mauritius and Singapore. I would also like to note that this is where their journey begins, that is Calcutta, pre-colonial, there is colonial India, and some of them proceed towards Mauritius, while towards the end of the novel, crisis erupts, and some of them proceed towards Singapore because of their differences. And this is a reminder what opium did to the people of both China and England, as a result of which the Chinese retaliated against the British imperial rule in Guangzhou or the Canton area. So, and also how William Hazlitt, as well as the blues talking um, poets like Barbauld and Hannah More, they also emphasize upon the consumption of opium and what it did to the Victorians in Victorian England in 19th century. So the next novel that I'm going to focus on is The Hungry Tide, which is yet another um, marine novel, but its main um, focus is not the Indian Ocean, but rather the Sundarban Delta, which is a shared ecosystem between India and Bangladesh, the eastern periphery of India and the western periphery of Bangladesh. So the Sundarban Delta and the Bay of Bengal, they take a very important canvas against which the narrative unfolds. The trajectory proceeds in The Hungry Tide. It is a fourth novel which came out in 2005, um, before the Ibis trilogy and the Sea of Poppies. And in this novel, Ghosh offers a humanist critique of dispossession in the post colonial world. It deals with people who are out of place and are seeking a home. It is in a post colonial India with its colonial past and continued claims for social justice from the displaced, the Dalits, that is, the Hindu minorities, and women, that refugees are created. So, this particular novel also is it plays in a very important prelude to and reference to the Morchi Jhapi massacre, which had taken place in 1979, post the Bangladeshi Liberation War in 1971, when hundreds and thousands of refugees, the Hindu minorities, lower caste people who are called the Dalits in India in today's world, they had there was a huge influx from the Bangladeshi borders to India, to this Sundarban Delta. It was protected land and reserved by under the Indian forestries, but it had been illegally occupied by the refugees from Bangladesh. And initially, the Bengal government had been able to tackle the problem. They had been able to provide accommodation, homes to these refugees, but later, when it's the influx became more and the exodus from Bangladesh became something which they could not. It was unprecedented as uh, the amount of refugees came from Bangladesh to India. So now all these refugees that came in 1979 that were relocated to the Dondokaronno area. It's a very um, uh, dry, barren land in the the common areas that mergence between the states of West Bengal, Orissa, and Bihar and Jharkhand. So many people, many of these refugees, they ended up dying because these places were not suitable for human habitation back then. And as a result of which, there was a backlash against the Bengal government, but which the situation could have been handled in a lot better way because it was sensitive. But so this is it also plays a very important um, this particular incident also plays a very important role in this novel because there are references to it. And the Morchi Jhapi spectral refugee is emblematic of the inadequacy of the post-colonial state to provide a safe home for Dalits, minorities, and other marginalized occupying an unhomely space in the post-colonial nation. In fact, many of these refugees in the Sundarbans are Dalits. They are unhomely, not only in the sense that they are out of place, without a place on land or history, but the land itself is unhomely by virtue of being inhospitable. But Ghosh notes, or no human settlement could flourish because of predators and the very nature of the land of the Sundarbans. Ghosh has here foregrounded the impossibility of inhabiting the Sundarbans. The islands could never really be home because home implies stability, security, and freedom from fear. It is, in a sense, of the home and homelessness in the now land, now water, the Sundarbans, that the post colonial uncanny emerges. The uncanny, as theorized by Freud in 1919, is about the human sense of house and home. It is a perception of a space where the perceiver finds itself simultaneously at home and not at home. The uncanny is the name of this experience of double perception of any space which is at once familiar and strange, safe and threatening, mine and not mine. The home is a sensate condition, and the uncanny being a matter of perception is different for different people. Maria Tata suggests, following the work of Vetan Todrov, that ambiguity in the uncanny event generates the hesitation that defines the fantastic. What is significant in Tata's reading of the uncanny is the emphasis on hesitation as the state of mind of perceiving subject. This also shifts the uncanny out of the realm of the purely psychosexual into a more worldly state of location, topoi, place, and perceptions of place. The sight of a particular place or event invokes an uncanny dread because the perceiver hesitates to classify, define, and identify the ambiguity in place or event. According to Ghosh, uncanny is that of the open landscape, of the agora of the Sundarbans for guests like Kanai and Pia. These two are the main protagonists of the novel, apart from Fokir, who is kind of like keeps moving on from place to place in his own hometown, and so this is the placelessness which I have been talking about. Nobody feels to be in a safe space until and unless nature has accepted that a human being or that entity. As Kanai and Pia, the embodiments of westernized metropolitan technology reliant culture, discover, it is not data or codified knowledge that ultimately renders the Sundarbans familiar, homely, and secure. The uncanny was once the domain of the sacred and religious, and later entered the domain of scientific rationality in the forms of ghosts, vampires, and the undead. The story of the novel is inseparable. And I would like to um, quote um, a very interesting um, series of lines which is the perfect embodiment of the metaphor of the land. The river's channels are spread across the land like a fine mesh net, creating a terrain where the boundaries between land and water are always mutating, always unpredictable. When these channels meet at these confluences, the water stretches back to the far edges of the landscape, and the forest dwindles into a distant rumor of land. Echoing back from the horizon in the language of the place, such a confluence is spoken of as Mohona, a strangely seductive word wrapped in many layers of bewilderment. There are no borders here to divide fresh water from salt, river from sea. Some say the water steers away the entire promontories and peninsulas. At other times, it throws up new shelves and sandbanks where there are none before. When the tides create new land overnight, mangroves begin to gestate. So the entire novel is divided into two sections, that is Joar and Bhata. Joar is high tide and Bhata is low tide. So um, the marshes, they don't make any discriminatory advances towards human beings as the human beings on land do. The land is unpredictable, suggesting uncertainty and unreliable knowledge for the perceiver. And the situation of intellectual uncertainty, hesitation about the land is reinforced by numerous images and metaphors like rumor, seductive word, many layers of bewilderment, all suggesting not only false, uncertain knowledge but also illusion and secrecy. In Hungry Tide, the land is what does not readily give itself up to the interpretation. It is encountered yet disappears, sensed but not always seen, like a secret glimpsed at but not fully revealed. The secrecy is at the heart of both novels. Secrets of the dolphins, movements that Pia hopes to uncover because she is a cytologist and comes to the Sundarbans because she wanted to research on the river dolphins and the secret of what happened in Morich Chapi in 1978. Ghost's post colonial uncanny is about the politics of dispossession and the question of home or lands. The uncanny of the tide country in which refugees and the poor are reduced to apparitions that point to an unjust past and present generates its own mythic anthropology and geography. Such an uncanny also treats the globalized Indian with disdain. In a land that is sometimes not land at all, the colonial master and the global Indian are also rendered wraith-like or deeply scarred. What makes the space canny a marginally secure home is knowledge, which belongs to Fokir. And as the characters finally discover what Bone Bibi and the Sundarban Delta, the forest, is all about, they are provided shelter The uncanny becomes subsumed under the indigenous canny when Fokir's mystic folkloric knowledge becomes translated into a pro game of action in the tide country. The turn up to the indigenous canny constitutes the hungry tide, suggests the ethical post-colonial. So both the novels focus on the unification of crew members of Ibis, and in case of The Hungry Tide, residents of Lushibari, is Lucy's house, which is one of the major islands on which this novel is based on. There are many islands in the Sundarban archipelago, but Lushibari is what a fictional island town that takes precedence. An uncanny sense of connection exists between nature and humans involved. The theme is aligned with the works of Herman Melville's Moby Dick or the Whale and Joseph Conrad's The Heart of Darkness. Another novel that I forgot to mention is Fred Dieguez's Feeding the Ghosts. So this is the bibliography. If you're interested in knowing a bit more on regarding the Opium War, you can very well refer to this amazing book by Julia Lovell. And so that's it from my side. Thank you.